What is the second life of an architecture project? Hey, my name is Marcin Żebrowski and welcome to the third season of Urbcast, my podcast about urbanism, architecture, urban planning and many more. So, welcome! I hope that you can hear from the tone of my voice that I was missing you guys, and I'm very happy to be back with my podcast, both in Polish and in English. I will release the English episode every second week, and this year I would like to focus on business development and communication in architecture. I think that this is something that might be overlooked sometimes because when we talk about architecture projects, we talk about visualizations, we talk about fancy images, and also about countless hours that architects are spending in front of computers to design those. But I think that there is something that is extremely important and maybe sometimes the most important thing in having a successful architecture practice. And it is the magic power of PR and communication or business development. So this is the whole department that helps to promote the projects, but also to bring the commissions and the projects into the house. Since I am extremely interested in this part of architecture and urban planning, I'm starting the business development and communication series in my podcast. I will be interviewing practitioners from business development, PR and communication departments from architecture offices in Copenhagen, but not only. To prove that I will be not very Copenhagen-centric, I wanted to invite you to the newest conversation with Ippolita Nicotera, who is an architect but also the head of PR and business development at Berlin-based studio called TOPOTEK1. TOPOTEK1 is one of the leading offices in Europe, I would say, with a focus on landscape architecture and urban planning, but not only. You probably might have heard about TOPOTEK1 before because they were behind the extremely famous project in Copenhagen, which is called Superkilen, and it was kind of this linear public space and a park which was painted in red color, so it got a name, the Red Square, and this is extremely famous project in Copenhagen, so probably you have heard about it, and if you did, TOPOTEK1 is the studio behind it. Without further ado, let's dive into the PR, business development, communications in architecture with my today's guest, Ippolita Nicotera. And let's talk about what is the second life of an architecture project. Ippolita, welcome and thank you for joining Urbcast.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this talk. It's very interesting for me. Yeah, to think about my own work. It's a great occasion.
Exactly. I hope it's going to be a good occasion for you to reflect on your own work as well. And I'm just happy that you are joining this series of PR and business development in architecture that I just started this year in my podcast. Because I think that it happens that we might overlook the importance of PR in architecture work because we often focus on the design, on the final images, on the boards, and so on. But as you said, when we've been preparing to this conversation, that often when a project is winning a prize, for example, or is being built, it kind of gets its second life. And today I wanted to focus on the second life of the project, and not only the one that architects spent designing, but the second life that you, people responsible for PR, are spending on promoting the project and building the brand of the office. And after this a bit long introduction, I just wanted also to ask you to just briefly say a couple of words about you and your work at TOPOTEK.
Yeah, well, everything started more or less by chance. I'm an architect. I studied architecture in Italy and in Germany. At some point after finishing my study, I moved from Italy to Germany. It wasn't a very interesting time. It was in the 90s, and Berlin was the most exciting place to be. I worked as an architect, and at that time, I was not thinking of doing PR. And maybe it was also not so important. There was no PR necessity at that time, or no interest in this, not really. But at that time, I had the occasion to meet young architects, young landscape architects. It was very interesting because a new generation of landscape architects architects was coming out and TOPOTEK was one of them. So I had occasion to meet Martin. And at some point, just so by chance, I met him on the train. I was teaching at that time. I was teaching in Bremen. So I was traveling between Berlin and Bremen. I said, come to our office. I am looking for someone for the PR department, and you have great communication skills. So everything started in this way. So I think it was a nice occasion to see how also personality. I don't want to say I have a personality, but I have the ability to come and talk to people and connect to people. So I think it was a good base on which we develop also my role and the entire department here at TOPOTEK1. I think Martin was very already seeing the future. It's always very open, as a very fresh mind, and he knew already at that time that PR would be important.
You mentioned that you are a very open person and you like to connect and communicate. And I think that this is a very important part of being a person responsible for PR and business development strategies in an architecture office. But is that common for architects to be involved in those PR tasks? Because you said that you've been an architect yourself, but it's often that we see architects as those introverts, spending a lot of time in front of the screen, designing, maybe having their headphones on. So being kind of in their own zone of designing. And here, as a part of this PR, you need to kind of step out and you need to reach out to people. So what type of personality do you think it's needed? And do you think that is it possible for every architect to become involved in this PR side?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe not, but the same question could be related to architects who make competition, other works more in the construction design. So it depends of your own personality and ability and skills to decide if you prefer to make competition, to work on the design phase, or more on details and construction side. I didn't like the construction side. I did it in my career, let's say, but I never liked it, the jokes usually people do on construction side. I never felt comfortable with this. I like it to see how things get built and become real, but I never liked the atmospheres on this side. And when I had the possibility to come here to TOPOTEK and start thinking more of concept and also relate my work more to people who think about ideas, how to present ideas, how to promote ideas. I think this was much more closer to me than discussing details on the construction side.
Perfect. So it came very natural. And I think it's important to use the natural skills because we are all different. And this is what makes us good designers, right? So we use our strengths. And how did you feel starting this position? What was the biggest challenge as a PR person? Because you need to connect this design attitude, design knowledge, like good eye for details. And at the same point, you need to use some PR strategies, some marketing, communicating as well. How did you see your role when you started? What were the kind of first challenges also you had?
Big challenge was to learn how to be clear what we wanted to reach, but at the same time have the right way to tell things. It's very important to be nice, to be polite, but at the same time to be clear on what you want. And this is sometimes maybe not so obvious. If you don't do it, maybe as an architect, you are used to discuss details if you want to reach something from your client or from the construction company. But if you want to present something and get something, you have to find the right way to ask for this. So I think this was maybe the first challenge I met.
And do you think it is possible to learn the role on the go, or did you have any educational background for it as well?
I think it's possible to learn because you can, of course, see how it works when you are in such a department or in such a situation. But you have to bring your own sensibility in order to be able to get the right tone, way to look for, to ask for.
So it is possible, as you said, and I think that this is also a good message for the ones who are listening to us and might be willing to be involved more in this PR side. But is it the same with the business development? Because how would you distinguish these roles of being more of this communication person and a PR person from the business development tasks? Because actually at TOPOTEK you do both, right?
Yes, I do both. Yes. Well, I don't see a big difference, I have to say, because I approach maybe both on the same way. I think it's always very interesting and very important in the business development to find the right way to connect to people, to put the right team together. I think the big issues is always which kind of team are you going to put in together for a bid if you want to get a new project. Sometimes we do this by ourselves, only with our company. But in very big projects, and this is now usual, it's very important that you have a good team. And the question, who is going part of this team, who is joining this team, is a big question. And also in this case, you need a good communication skill and you need to be convincing and to find the right people in order also to make people be interested in joining this adventure. Every big bid is an adventure because you never know if it will work or not.
So it's putting together some puzzle pieces.
Yes, exactly.
To get the whole image.
Yeah. And of course, during the time you have these pieces already, you have the puzzle tiles there, and you have just to think, okay, which tile could be the right one. But it's also interesting always to look for new companies, new possible partners, because also for us it's interesting to go over the usual stuff, not to repeat ourselves every time.
Finishing this part on this more personal note, because I'm asking you about your ideas and your perspective on PR and business development, I would just like to hear how like a normal day at work looks like if you combine those two perspectives on communication and also acquiring projects. I assume that those tasks might be just mixed kind of into one big pot. So if you could just share how a typical day of your work looks like.
There is no typical day at TOPOTEK. There are always surprises. So yeah, that's because we have a lot of also a question from outside coming. So every day some request for participation in competition or projects. So first thing every day is to check the emails. And I do this already before coming to the office. Yeah. So I'm aware of what is expecting me and I'm prepared, and I can sometimes also organize a couple of things before being here. I think this is very helpful to have the overview, what is coming, also to set some priority list, because it's not possible sometimes to do everything at the same time. So, and we are also a couple of people working in our PR department. So I think it's also important to share information and to organize our work in the most efficient way. So, I check my email. I decide what is the most important thing to do first, or maybe other things later during the day. And then depending of the priority, we start and I share also the work with the other two colleagues who help me, support me in this.
So there is no a typical day?
No, not at all. I can't say this.
That's very exciting. I think that this is the best part of it, as I see it, that it's so much happening. It's just exciting to tackle those daily tasks that differ. And you also said the most important things need to come first. What would you say is the most important thing in your work, in the work of a person on such a position? Would it be maybe more of this external work or internal work? Because I guess you need to translate between those two words, right? Between the inside the office and outside the office. What would you say is kind of this most fruitful, the most rewarding, but also the biggest task?
I think you have to be aware of what you have to do internally before going outside. So I think it's very important to prepare yourself, in this case, to prepare myself to the different tasks before then getting outside and looking for something, searching for something, or offering something.
I see that this is about the dialogue a lot in PR, in architecture. And since in this discussion, I wanted to ask you this question and try to answer that, how to promote your architectural business, I wanted to talk about this importance of PR and business development teams and this second life of projects. Because as I said before, I really like this phrase that there is this second life of the projects after, for example, winning a competition. What happens next? If there is a project, and for example, it might be a competition that your office is doing, and after you win a competition, there is the second life of an architecture project. How would you describe this process from your perspective?
Well, there are maybe different things. First, so if we win a competition, but sometimes even if we don't win a competition, but we like the work we have done, it's very important to share this on different channels and medias. But I think it's also very important to pay attention because right now we have so many possibilities to be present. That is, it's also important to be present in an elegant way, not to be too pushy, not to be too obvious, maybe to choose, if possible, where to show the work. So we have to think how to be present, not just be present. And not at any price, I think. No? So maybe, I think it's good to be there, but not everywhere. I think also people get really bored because they see so many images every day. We have a huge amount of images and sometimes you can't really see the difference. So it's also important that you show some details and some images that then they can't be confused with 100 competition done before or at the same time. So this is one point. The other point for projects more than the competition is to show what is going to be and to happen when the project is done. I remember when I studied, when I was younger, it was normal to show the project always empty. All the architectural photographies are without people, were taken without people, without showing people. But now we are in a completely different attitude, and we know how important the social aspect, social part of a project, of the life in cities, how important this is. And it is important to show how the project can be used, can be approached. So it's important to show also images that really represent the life of a project and not only the project itself. It's not just about nice details, nice materials, nice colors, but it's also and maybe even more about how people use this project.
I think there is a better understanding of the architecture that it is for people. And this people-centered approach is also very famous in Scandinavia, but also in other countries as well. And I think it's changed for the good that we started acknowledging the aim of the architecture and the projects. And since you also mentioned the life of the project after it's being released, after it's being won, for example, or even if it's not being won, but it is just a nice piece of work that you want to share. How would you present this life cycle of a project? Do you, for example, if there's a project that you won a couple of years ago, do you think that it's still possible to keep this project alive in the internet? And let's say if it's not like a build project, but this is something that maybe you won, maybe that was like an idea competition. And how would you keep this project alive?
Yeah, it's depends also for the project, of course. In different way. It is possible in different ways. Sometimes we send our photographer to take pictures of the same project after a couple of years, after a couple of months, or after 1 year, after 2 years. Because, for example, in project with a lot of plants and trees, the vegetation need to grow. So when you take picture at the beginning, you have a very clean project, just completely, no sign of graffitis or similars, but the plants are maybe small, young. And after a couple of years, so you have a different situation because the trees get bigger, the plants get bigger, but the wood, for example, is not the same. Doesn't look as it was before. We have, for example, a project here just on the corner as a square where we designed a big bench, and the bench completely changed the color from the very beginning. But it's natural. It's a natural process. And I have to say, I like the project now much more than at the beginning because it fit more also with the color of the pavement and with other details. And it's also showed this as part of life. So this is a possibility. And then we have projects like, for example, Superkilen, where it's not about plants and not about changing of colors, maybe in some way also, but it's more about the uses, what people do there and how they approach the site. And this is a project that people really love. So we don't have to do so much because we see every day image of people taking picture of themselves and showing themselves in Superkilen on Instagram and other channels. So we don't have to do so much in this case. It's coming from itself.
I'm based in Copenhagen, so I couldn't not ask about Superkilen, and I'm happy that you just mentioned it, because this is a great example of a project that kind of develops and defends itself, right? You said that it doesn't require this much of PR work like now, because the project is well established, it's very known for Copenhagen. It's one of these go-to places where you are visiting the city. But I guess it also had to have a plan for it at the very beginning after the project was done to kind of show that this interesting new idea with the different colors is there. And how did it look like to promote this work, which was in different country as well, right? It's still Denmark is very close to Germany, but did you have like any particular idea or strategy on how to promote this colorful urban space?
Well, we had a lot of work for Superkilen. That's mean that the project was very particular and it was already from the beginning clear that it would be different from many other projects. We had also one of the client was a foundation which promote a social project in Denmark, Realdania. The other client was the city, so it was already clear that in some way the social aspect would be so important. And because we were aware of the meaning of this project, we promoted the project on different level. First of all, we worked with inhabitants and with communication from the very beginning. Also, communication was already part of the project itself during the development of the idea of the concept and the build project. And then later, we also sent the project to many awards, procedures, so that through these procedures and through all the prizes that the project achieved, we reached also a lot of publicity, and maybe the most important, not the only one, but very important award was the Aga Khan Award. Following this, the Aga Khan Foundation asked us to produce a film. So there was so many steps of this way to present the project that for sure help us in this process.
And this is an example of a project which is built, and after you build it, you have this chance to make fantastic photographs and promote it with the whole world. And you have also people taking photos themselves and putting on Instagram and tagging, for example, Superkilen. And this is the second part. So I think it might be a bit easier if you have a project that is already built or already done. It's finished, it's opened, and it's celebrated. And then it is easy to also share it with photographs. But coming back to the first type of a project, something which is yet not built, how would you try to promote this type of work? Do you think that sending, for example, some images, some visualizations is enough? Or would you have another way of promoting a project that is not already built?
Yeah, I don't know if it's enough. Depend of the contest. It depends of the contest of the competition itself. Sometimes you have a discussion because maybe the topic, the site is so important that there is a kind of general discussion, and maybe there is some newspaper or some magazine really interested in this topic. So then it's more than just a couple of images. But sometimes most of the competition are just published after the result of the competition itself. And then it's probably about showing the most appropriate image, the image that really represents the concept idea of the competition.
I'm asking also because I'm a co-founder of Urban Design Collective, and we managed to get some special mentions for our projects. And then we, of course, try to promote it. We put it on the website, we publish something on LinkedIn and so on. But after some time, of course, kind of the publicity for the project dies out because they were more of this idea competitions. I'm just very curious about what could be the solutions for those projects to be more acknowledged and more, maybe not famous, but more promoted. And when we talk about PR and business development roles and communication, it's often that you hear about networking. And also I wanted to just ask about this networking. Do you think that the networking is the key to everything in this type of position, or it's not that important?
Oh, I think networking is very important today. It's not possible to work alone. It's not possible to live and survive alone. We are all so connected that you can't, I don't know, Brexit doesn't work. We can say, I believe. But on the other side, I'm not sure if we need to promote everything because we are so many. We produce so much.
Yeah.
We can't promote every single page we produce. I think it's more important to promote ideas. So if we reach and achieve a good result and we can recognize what is good, then maybe in the next competition we can in some way recycle the idea, reuse some concept, but not in the worst intention. So, not reuse and saying, so I did it, it was good, and then I did it a second time, but try to find a coherent line in our discourse, in our approach to the project. And then if you recognize that this idea is present 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, then you recognize this is a big idea, and you don't need just to show the image from the first competition, but you show maybe 3 images and they are all related because the concept and the approach is the same. So I think this is maybe more interesting than just promote 1 competition or 1 project.
But that's a good strategy. That's a good tip to pick and choose, to not promote everything and not overwhelm all the people, all the followers with your work, and not spam too much with, we did this, and this, and here's another project coming. But so you would say it's more about this strategic approach to what should be shared, and maybe that it's not that every image and every project should be shared, but more the style and way of thinking of the office. This is something that should be shared.
The philosophy of the office, let's say.
And here I also wanted to ask about some tips to conclude a bit about some practical advice as well. We just said that this is important to have some strategy and to share this philosophy behind the office. And if you could share some practical advice to maybe other architecture offices, or maybe just architecture students or young architects that would like to kind of level up their PR and marketing, what would that be?
This is a very big question. I would say be yourself. It's very simple. Yes, be present, but be yourself. Don't do everything just to be present. Be coherent with yourself. I think it's very important.
So just to try to find your own style of communication, of PR, of reaching out, instead of copying the solutions that are already out there in the market.
I think you have first to find your style, let's say. Style is maybe too superficial, but you have to find your language in your design, in your proposal, and also in your approach, and then you can present it.
Would you agree that it's better to be original than trying to copy anything?
I don't know. I think we appreciate the copies. So we had a monograph based on this idea. Everyone wants to be original today, and everyone try to be original, but it's I don't know if it's possible for everyone and all the time. And I think that you can also learn from copying. If you copy something good, you can do also good things.
Yeah, exactly. I'm asking because like sometimes you have those practical solutions, the things that architecture office do. And I guess that they do it because it works. But sometimes, as you said, it's also important to be true to yourself and also maybe try to be original as well. So I'm just trying to find is there like this third way where you can just copy some parts of the solutions, but also remain very, very original in your own style. And I'm saying here, for example, it is often to see a successful project being launched or published on Arc Daily, for example, or other magazines. But I'm thinking that wouldn't it be more successful if there would be some architecture offices that would try to come up with new ways of publishing their work? Maybe instead of sending it to some magazines, maybe they could produce their own book. How would you see those more original, innovative ideas?
I think there are different ways to present your work because a book is much more, let's say, you need a lot of work. In the back, and we love to do books, and usually we do books regularly. We produce and publish a lot of monograph, and we are present in many books and samples. But this is very different. You need time and work, and it is really different than presenting something on the web and in internet. So it's a completely different approach to this idea of being present. So I don't think it's possible to compare. It's not possible to say I make a book because you need another background, you need a publisher, you need money, you need good graphic designer and so on. Yeah, it's just completely another project for another approach to be present, in my opinion.
So it's important to find I would say word practical is something that is fitting here. So it's not about being only original, but it's also thinking about what is effective in terms of cost and time and the outreach and the success,
exactly. Right? But we need to be aware that publication on internet also disappeared very fast because the amount of new images every day becomes bigger. So you see something and 1 week later, you already have many new images that you have to digest. And the books is there, and you can always go through the pages. And if you enjoy it, if you think it's a good result, it's of course, it's let's say almost forever.
Okay. And summarizing it a bit, I've started this conversation on a more personal note. I asked you about how did you start with the PR and business development here at TOPOTEK1. And I would like to finish on the same rather personal note. And my question is, what was the biggest thing that you learned as a part of PR and business development here?
The biggest thing, I think I learned to take things in the hands and do them. I think that is the most important thing. Not to be shy and look at things and be proud of them, but not go further on this, but saying, okay, this is great. Let's do something with this.
So this proactive approach.
Proactive approach, yes.
I think that's also good advice for people who want to start their careers or develop their PR and business development, the project search in their offices or just in their professional work. So being responsible, being proactive is something that you would emphasize.
Yeah, for sure. Be responsible is very important, but in my opinion, from any activity, it doesn't matter what you do, but be responsible, be yourself, and do something with this.
Don't wait, don't procrastinate, but do it.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I hope that the last practical advice will come with the last question that I have to you, because I wanted to ask you for a book recommendation. If you have anything that would be within the scope of PR, marketing, communication, or business development within architecture, would you have such a book to recommend?
Really, I don't know which book on PR could be helpful. I don't know, but I would recommend the book on which I worked 2 years long almost. This is, of course, a kind of publicity now. Sounds like this.
That's allowed.
Thank you. But I think this book is really great. I was very lucky to work on this project here at TOPOTEK. We produced a monograph for our 20th birthday. And we had a great editor and art curator who was at the time director at the Kunsthaus in Graz. We had a fantastic graphic designer from Copenhagen, and we had the chance to go through all our projects. And the most important thing, we based the concept of this book on the topic of collaboration. And now I come back to the networking we were discussing before. The base of this book is that you can do things alone, you do things with other people, you do things with other people in a different way, you learn from them and they learn maybe from you, and the result is better when you do everything only relating yourself only to your own work and not looking over this line. So I think this book is something where you can learn about our work, but you can also learn about an approach.
That's a great ending note to our discussion, that the collaboration is everything. So thank you for being part of this collaboration here at my podcast. And thank you for sharing all the knowledge and story behind your development as PR and business development coordinator here at TOPOTEK1. Yeah, thank you very much, Ippolita.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. And I have to say, I paid so attention that I didn't say the title of the book. So maybe it's also a strategy. You can see if you can find the book now.
Maybe I will add the link to it, or maybe not.
Yeah, we'll see. Surprise.
Let's make the listeners interested into their own research about this.
We can help them if you wish.
Okay, we can help them.
With my pleasure also to share this content.
So let's just say the title. What was the title of it?
The title is Creative Infidelities on the Landscape Architecture of TOPOTEK1.
That's perfect.
This is the complete title. Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
Thank you very much, Ippolita. Thank you for listening to the newest episode of Urbcast. I hope that you've learned a lot from Ippolita, especially about how to promote your project in the architecture office, or maybe you are just an architect working alone. Remember about the importance of the PR and business development, and about the second life of the architectural project. No matter if you are a person who is a part of a bigger architecture office or you are an independent architect, just remember about the importance of PR and business development in your practice. And this communication and business development series in my podcast will be about giving you some practical advice from practitioners from communication and business development departments from our architecture offices in Copenhagen, in Europe, but not only. If you like this episode, feel free to connect with me on my social media, on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook, as well as to visit my website. You will find everything in the description of this episode. And I wish you a great day and hope to talk to you soon in 2 weeks. Thank you and have a good day.